My next guest is one of the real heroes in society. At the age of 17, she was kidnapped at knife point. She was assaulted repeatedly by a sex offender who was on parole for murder. When she was eventually released, she was victimized again by the system in many ways. But Angela Rose joins us. I saw her on TV. She's such an articulate spokesperson for victims' rights. Angela, how you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for having me.
So what is the impact watching, Ariel Castro, giving his side of the story when you're listening to the sob story and you listen to the victims? Does it make you relive your own kidnapping? What happens?
Well, it does. And in fact, I saw that they actually he had used plastic zip ties to bind Michelle, and that's what my perpetrator used. So, of course, it brings me back to that day, but I just watched in horror and disbelief yesterday as he justified his inhumane treatment of these three young women, describing the brutal rapes as consensual sex. Unbelievable. His apology was weak. There was so much narcissism. Everything focused on himself, with very little to no talk of the impact that his treatment had on these three women.
So what do you do about it? I mean, obviously there are sick people in society. You got to worry. As a father of five, I worry every day, every night about where my kids are, what they're doing, how they're doing, who's doing, and what do you do? What can you do to help heal the society from this kind of monster?
Well, we absolutely need to create communities that allow survivors the grace and the space to talk about these issues without shame and without fear. Because survivors of sexual assault often feel like it's their fault. There's a lot of victim blame that goes on. Well-meaning family and loved ones oftentimes want the survivors to just not talk about it and forget about it. And that really hinders the healing process, because when people are allowed to speak about it and release it, it allows the brain to process. Because if you don't, we see a lot of cutting, a lot of self-mutilation, a lot of eating disorders, and alcohol and drug abuse. And a lot of those things can be mitigated if we allowed survivors to speak about these issues and to allow them the strength to, it could just be talking in therapy. It could be talking to friends and family. It doesn't have to be publicly like Michelle Knight so bravely did yesterday.
Angela Rose is my guest. She was kidnapped from a shopping center outside of Chicago when she was just 17 years old. So when I looked at Michelle, she seems really awfully beat up by what happened to her. And I suspect the others are too. When they get over the adrenaline rush of being rescued and being, big stars in terms of the media, it would seem to me that they will have a very, very rough road to hoe.
Yeah, and it took me 8 years myself to go to therapy, and to find a good therapist is so incredibly important. And there's so many different treatment options that can give their lives back, in essence, because when you've been through something like that, it's hard to, get back, especially for 10 years. I mean, I was captive for just, basically one night. I can't imagine 10 years of their life. But healing is possible, and it's a journey. I think that what I loved is to see Gina's family describe her as a survivor and not a victim, and that's so important, because we need to let these young women know that healing is possible, but it's a choice and it's a journey. And I always say, from victim to survivor to thriver. You're victimized by something, you survive it, and then you can thrive from that negative experience.
Say that again. Victimize, survive, thrive? Is that what you said?
Exactly. From victim to survivor to thriver.
Should these three women still be friends? I mean, going forward, what do you think?
Well, I think so. I mean, I worked with the family of the girl that my perpetrator had murdered, and we created a lifelong friendship. The man who kidnapped me was on parole for murdering a 16-year-old girl, and we still have a relationship. So sometimes trauma does bind people together. And, I mean, I would understand if they want to move on and forget about it, but there is something to be said for having these three women be able to support each other through this experience. It's very profound.
Angela Rose, you're very profound. I appreciate you coming on today. I really do. I mean, you go in through hell, you went to hell and back, and I'm glad you came on the show. Very pleased to have you.
Thank you.
All right, Angela, thank you.